Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast. Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery is the third film in the Knives Out trilogy here by Rian Johnson, and it continues the exploits of the detective Benoit Blanc, who is Daniel Craig doing, of course, if you haven't watched the other two, he does this ridiculous southern, Louisiana accent that is just incredible. I love hearing him just chew up a scene with that dialogue. But we're picking up in a different location, in a different area, where we have a church that has a pastor, Jefferson Wicks, that is kind of almost cult-like status with his church. He's got his flock and his followers. He's very, very interesting with how he does his sermons and how he runs his church and stuff. But we have a new pastor that is sent to help him at his church, and Pastor Judd, or Father Judd. And it's really interesting to see the dynamic that happens there. We have Father Judd played by Josh O'Connor. We have Jefferson Wicks as Josh Brolin. Those two play off of each other. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor with this. There's a lot of course, religious commentary and political commentary and commentary on influencers and a lot of different areas there. But I'll admit I had a lot of fun with this again. I've really enjoyed these Knives Out mysteries. It's something about trying to unravel it that it's making you think while you're watching the film and wanting you to, well, you may suspect every single person at one point in this film, and it can somewhat be a little predictable of finding out who it was in the end, or who all was involved with it. But I think overall they did a really good job of keeping that mystery kind of fluid and mixing up exactly who it was. So you may have suspected someone, but they took you away from it for a little while. But it was a good time for me.
Yeah, I had a blast watching this too. These are fun. I love a good murder mystery story, and these are a fun modern take on the genre. We don't get too many of these anymore, but this is such a fun trilogy, and this is a great entry in it, in my opinion. Like you said, I love the Benoit Blanc character, who's basically in this story playing an atheist in a church. He only believes in the truth. The truth is the truth, no matter how you want to sugarcoat it. But this was a fun case in this movie where you get, the death of, spoiler alert, it's the death of, Jefferson Wicks here, and they're trying to solve the murder here and all of the shenanigans around it. And it's just so much fun because they get a really solid cast for all of these films. They get well-known names to play all the different characters.
Glenn Close.
Yeah, Glenn Close is one that stood out in this one too, but you had Mila Kunis, you had Jeremy Renner, you had a lot of well-known actors in this movie, and it's just so much fun to go on this journey of playing who did it and them kind of toying with it, where you almost feel in some points it's going to be very obvious at the beginning who did it, and then they kind of throw in a twist in there just to kind of throw you off the scent, and then come back around and it could be somebody you initially suspected, but done in a way you weren't really expecting. That's kind of the formula that they put together for these, but it's just a fun, it's just a fun journey you go on to try to figure out, okay, who was involved? Why were they involved? What's the circumstances around it? And they just play with that in these films so well. They're just highly entertaining, funny mystery movies.
You can't even go almost slapstick at some point when Jefferson Wicks was doing his first confession to Judd, and the stuff he was throwing out. Okay, Pastor, that's
a lot.
That's a lot. But yeah, you got Glenn Close as Martha. She is pretty much the main woman at the church. She takes care of the finances. She takes care of making sure the pastor eats and makes sure everything is taken care of there. You've got Thomas Hayden Church as a groundskeeper, Sampson, who I wanted a little bit more out of him just because I love him as an actor. He can do serious and comedy so well, and this is a blend of a little bit serious with comedic elements in it. I wanted a little bit more out of him, but he did great in what he was given. You even got Jeffrey Wright in a small role playing the kind of one of the higher up priests and pastors. He's the one that kind of sends Judd out, but you've got pastors cursing and saying stuff off kilter. So it's not taking itself too seriously. So you should know by now, especially the last one with Glass Onion, with how it went heavy into celebrity and the rich and powerful and that. And this is more of a kind of low country church of just this backwater town and everything else. So you get a different perspective. It even took a little bit before Daniel Craig's character with Blanc showed up into the film, maybe about 45 minutes or so before he really showed up into the film. And of course he shows up in style and everything else. I love Daniel Craig in this character because, he started this when he was towards the end of Bond, and it was such a different departure from what we were seeing in the very dark and serious and grittiness of Bond, and to have him come into this with that accent and just playing this role. Like, he's perfect for this role. Like, he was just another amazing performance by him in this. Like, you just smiled and laughed. At least I did when he was on screen.
Yeah, the accent's incredible. It's so over the top and funny. Like we were talking about before, it's like this Southern foghorn, leghorn Methodist. Like it's so funny to hear it. It's very imitatable for us. It's like I have a lot of fun, talking like Benoit Blanc if you need to, just to be silly over the top. But yeah, this was fun, man. This goes on a very realistic but over the top portrayal of what can happen when this priest gains like this cult-like following where he has these very devoted members of the church, and what's going on with each of them and how they all come together and why they're in the flock as they call them. And it's just a fascinating group of characters that we get here, and it goes on a fun journey, man. This was a lot of fun. I got a lot of joy out of guessing who did it, and wound up being correct and half correct, I would say, in who I thought was ultimately responsible for these things. But it's just a cool story, man. They go dark when they need to. They bring a ton of levity and comedy when they need to. It's a good mix of genres that they put together in these movies, and this one I think it holds up with the other two, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really solid. It's a ton of fun. But yeah, the story is it's layered in it, because you start off, it's about, Father Judd, who at 17, he had been boxing and something went wrong. So he decided to devote his life to the church, and he gets to the main church where he's, learning and everything else, and is punching out another pastor, which gets him sent to this church. But he's trying to do the right thing, while at the same time you got Jefferson Wicks, who's very much a cult leader of this church. Like, they even go into it that he weeds out the weak of the people who don't follow him with his sermons every week, because he goes off on these tangents and everything. But there's a deeper layer, because there's a mystery about the church, because his grandfather, who ran the church for a while, had kind of a mystery around him, that he apparently had left the church and left his heirs all this money and his legacy, but nothing could be found. And there's, a deeper story with a woman named Grace, and with, just all of this, and a crypt that cannot be opened from the outside, unless you use heavy equipment, can only be opened from the inside, which is, a little weird, because, who would be opening a crypt from the inside?
Right.
But there's a lot of mystery like that, and you get different characters. You've got like a sci-fi author who lives in this town, who is kind of struggling to get his next book out, and he's writing a book about, Jefferson Wicks. You have Kerry Washington playing Vera Draven, who's a realtor, and she's this kind of just another kind of mystery person, which I'm not going to go into too much detail in some of these characters, because it's very important to the mystery and the story. You got Jeremy Renner playing Dr. Nat, who is, the local town doctor. But all of these characters, including Cy, who's like this influencer who wants to be in politics, and even a joke about climate and the political space, with like, I tried this and I tried that and I tried this. Like, it's just nailing all the different staples that the politicians go after and stuff, and none of it worked. But each one of these have, it sets up a good motive on why they could have been the killer, or why they weren't the killer. And yeah, we said it does such a great job of making, okay, it's definitely them. Maybe it's this person now. Oh, maybe it's this person now. And that's the good thing about a well-done murder mystery, is that it does make you second guess your first choice, or your second choice, your third choice. It makes you think, because you may end up getting most of the ending correct, but it adds enough of that sleight of hand and that mystery on who potentially this could be that it never really felt like from moment one that you did not have any suspicion that it could be anyone else but this person. And that's just bravo to a well-crafted story.
Yeah, I mean, the writing on this is done really well. It's shot beautifully. It doesn't linger in too many subjects for too long. Like, it kind of moves along. For it being almost 2.5 hour movie, like, it moves at a relatively well done pace. Like, it doesn't really suffer from any pacing issues, I don't think, either, which is something we try to be cognizant of when you get to a longer film. Like, does it need to be that long?
It's almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and I don't think it really suffered from any pacing issues either. It kept you engaged the entire time. Like, this was one that I was, forcibly paying attention to, like, seeing if I missed any, like, minor details, especially when you get to the reveal where you're like, okay, this is what actually happened, and there's a lot of speculation. And the way they just kind of, like you said, give you that sleight of hand where you're looking one way while something's happening over here that you need to be sure you're also paying attention to. And they do a fun job of making the little details matter when you pay attention to something, because it's almost a blink and you can miss it, but then when they slap you in the face with it later, you're like, oh yeah, I knew I should have paid attention here. Like, they do a really good job of doing that, which is a fun staple of a murder mystery that I think they've really found a good formula that works for them in a genre like this, that, they find different creative ways to tell these stories, and each of these three have tackled different topics and subjects, and I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this. I think they hit the nail on the head again with a really well done story on this one. I really do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I want to rewatch it too for a lot of Easter eggs, because there's some deep cuts with some of the references to different TV shows and films of the past, and there's just so many different nods and winks and references to a lot of stuff. And one of my favorites part of this still is that in the last one, in Glass Onion, there was a lot of jokes and references to Jeremy Renner as the actor. Like, he's got his own Renning hot sauce, and they poke fun at other aspects of his life in the last one, and now he's a character in the third one. So there's a lot of, like, in-universe jokes. There's even some Big Lebowski jokes that have some ties to the cast as well. So there's a lot of, like, in-jokes at the expense of actors in here, but also not in here, or past projects they've done and other things. So there's just this really neat kind of meta around all of this, because he's just poking fun at so many different things, and so many different references. And I don't know if it was actually a Lord of the Rings reference, but there felt like there was one, because I think it was Josh Brolin's Jefferson Wicks just yelled out, "You shall not pass," or something like that. I'm like, that's got to be a Lord of the Rings. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly where all these references are pulled from, because there's a lot of different references in there.
Yeah, they do a good job of, like, getting things to kind of grab at you and kind of make you pay attention if you're not already doing so. But I like how they keep alluding to these things, and these people keep showing up in future movies. Like, are they teasing who's coming from a potential next Knives Out story? Because, I mean, this is the third one in the series, but there's no real, like, definitive end yet, because with a character like Blanc, he's like a Sherlock Holmes. He's like a character like that you can keep finding ways to bring them back for other films. And as good as this is, like, I know it's not physically taxing on Daniel Craig. Like, he could make several more appearances as this character if they find more creative ways to tell these stories. We'll see if we get a future for Benoit Blanc beyond this, obviously. Like, this was another shining moment for him, man. And it's one that I don't feel like ever really gets potentially stale unless we get just like a bad story, which we haven't gotten so far. Like, that's the fun of this genre, is you can keep kind of coming back to it with different stories if they work. Like, you're not trying to tell a continual story with a character like this, which is what a lot of, and kind of preluding to what we're going to talk about later with our favorite trilogies. Like, when you're trying to tell a cohesive story over the course of several movies versus telling different stories using a similar character, like, I feel like that's much easier to do than it is to try to tell a continuous story throughout the course of 3 films.
I just wonder when he's going to run out of celebrities that he can use in here, because he's packing 10, 12 There's big names in there. Because, I mean, you had, was it Chris Evans and quite a lot of other people in the first one, and you brought in just because, and it's really interesting how they done the story. You know, the first one was more murder mystery in a house in a small town, just kind of doing around this group of people, and then you went with Glass Onion, which was much more bigger about the celebrity and the aspects, and I believe they went onto an island for that one, so you had a different one, and this one went to a small town church, so there are different locations and ways that they can continue doing this for a long time, because, yeah, you could really, I mean, you could get deeper into politics and have something that revolves around an election in another town or something. Like there's so many different ways they can continue that on, and I'm all for it because just keep giving me Daniel Craig as that character, and so I'll be happy with it. But yeah, you get a star-studded cast. The only one that I felt was kind of out of place with me was Mila Kunis as the chief of police, because I don't know, I just didn't fully believe her as the chief of police, because once Benoit shows up, he takes over everything, so the police are almost useless in a way, and she's just kind of tagging along, even though she's the chief of police, and it's also, she still looks like she did on that 70s show, so it's kind of just hard to take her almost seriously as a chief of police, just because she's done mostly comedies, and she's doing this stuff. She wasn't bad. I just didn't fully believe her as a chief of police.
Yeah, I mean, in these kind of murder mystery stuff, the police always seem to take a back seat whenever they are involved, because you got the detective working the case. Everybody's like, all right, we get it, Blanc. But you have they were a little bit more involved in this one, because as it seems like, to get a little spoilery in it, like when he seems to be at a crossroads of trying to explain exactly what's going on, because this all revolves around what's a quote-unquote impossible case, right? An impossible situation, an impossible crime that they're trying to solve, because at the end of the day, Benoit Blanc believes the truth is the truth, and there's nothing that can stop you from getting to the truth, like there's always an explanation for something. So it's about this obsession with an impossible crime that he's trying to solve, and you have the police very much involved in that when, he's hitting these roadblocks in his investigation. It's like, he's like, there's got to be something. And the cops are like, well, it's definitely this. Like they have a little bit more of a role to play in this situation than they typically would. But yeah, in a lot of parts, and these cops are just completely useless to the story, but they provide some good fodder in here. I think they do a good job of that. But yeah, Mila Kunis, that role could have been played by literally anybody, but it was still cool to see her in a role like that, because we love Mila Kunis as an actress. But yeah, it was one of those, like, that role could have really gone to just about anybody, but it was cool they got her to do it.
Yeah, and like I said, the story unfolds really well. They do the mystery part really well there, because like I said, you're unfolding multiple different angles, because you have, is this actually an impossible case for Benoit? Is he actually not certain, or is this part of his game?
Right.
What exactly is going on with this group that is just way too intensely following Jefferson Wicks? And what is his story and everything that's going on with him? And then you have, Father Judd, and exactly what kind of person and a character he is, because we get that he's a new pastor, and he's trying to right wrongs from his youth and his past and stuff, and it really marries everything together really well. Like I said, there's a ton of political commentary, a ton of religious commentary, because as we mentioned, Benoit is an atheist. You're dealing with a church that has overly religious people, so I mean, it's basically hitting every angle of the religious, of those that are just there for maybe a personal gain, or there for a monetary gain, or those who are trying to use the church for their own careers and things like that, but also the ones that are using the church almost as a cult. And there's so many different angles and layers it does with it, that it could have probably been trimmed maybe 10-15 minutes, but I don't think what it did, the pacing wasn't bad. There just could have been a little bit of tightening that they could have done with it, because it is almost 2.5 hours. But I didn't mind, because I was having so much fun with it, especially towards the end when Benoit gets up on the pastor's stand to get everyone's attention, is just yelling at him and everything else. Is the over-the-topness of that character is just so much fun. Like, I feel like Daniel Craig is just having an enormous amount of fun doing these movies. And yeah, I would love to continue seeing these into 4, 5, 6, as long as they can find a good story and keep writing good mystery, because that first time that it gets a story out there where it's just not as strong is pretty much going to be the end of it. I don't think they could probably rebound from it, but so far I think they've done a solid job with the 3 films in the Knives Out trilogy so far.
Yeah, they're each one of these on its own merits are a ton of fun. And like I said, this is just one of those genres that as long as you can continue to tell a good story, that character can be dropped into any situation. And I love his way of trying to get to the truth and how it slightly changes in every story, because he's essentially the smartest guy in every room, and he knows he is. But sometimes he plays some of these games, and you almost wonder if it's going to burn him at some point. And I'm kind of wondering if they take a story in that direction where he might actually get put in more real, legitimate danger than he's in. Because he finds himself in some precarious situations, especially in the second one, I think was more precarious for him than being in any real danger in this one, just because of the situation. But I'd almost like to see it go to that level for him where he finds himself in a real pickle that he's got to not only get out of, but solve a mystery at the same time.
Or where everything points to him being the killer and he's got to unravel his own mystery.
Right. And that could be a fun story to tell. And we'll see if they eventually go that route. But yeah, man, these films are just fun, man. I like them. They're not perfect movies by any stretch, but these are just good. Sit down, watch, figure out who did it, and like just go on the journey that they go on, because these are just a lot of fun. And this one is no different. This one had more darker tones to it than the other two, which I appreciated it taking a little bit more of a darker tone, but there's still plenty of levity and absurdness in this that I was not only looking at things seriously, but laughing and having a good time watching it, which I think brought a lot of balance to this movie. I feel like this movie was probably the most balanced of the 3 as far as tone and going serious when it needs to, but also like just lightening it up with some really funny stuff in the middle as well. Like they do a good job of balancing that here.
Yeah, and it definitely had a few surprises that I didn't exactly see coming more at the end, and of how they handled a few situations and how they got there. But it made sense how it did. And plus, also like the way he balances having something really dark and then hitting you right away with humor just works so well, because there are some like there's a death, but then the next scene is something very humorous with the body or something else like very silly. Like it can get crass with some of its humor. It can get really almost slapsticky with some of its humor, but it works and it feels, because you have everybody committing. Like Glenn Close just commits so hard to being this over-the-top church lady, and you have Josh Brolin really committing to being this guy, almost really pompous type of pastor who just is so full of himself and believes his own message so much that like he can do no wrong, and he's just got that arrogant cockiness to him that Brolin plays so really well, because he feels threatened by Father Judd coming to his church, like, this is my church, not your this is mine, you're not taking over, this is my place. And it really, once they start unraveling it, it gets like really fun and intense that you're just trying to figure out. Like, that's where I really like, it's one of those moments where, all right, I'm leaning forward. Let's pay attention to see what clues I got right and what I got wrong. And I do feel like I got a lot of it right. A few things I didn't see and I got wrong, because it does, like I said, a well-balanced murder mystery is going to make you feel like everyone can do it. And it's trying to distract you from who it is in the end, but you're not going to perfectly ever be able to not have that person be, the suspect to somebody. But it was balanced so really well of making sure that you had fun while also really trying to just crank your brain to try to, well, now they show this, so that means this person can't do it. Or is there some deeper layer to that really gets it? And I think through all 3, Rian Johnson has done a really good job of balancing that twist aspect and keeping you on your toes. That I'm going to give you clues to let you know who it is. That if on a second rewatch you come back, oh yeah, that all makes sense of or this, and this. But on the first watch, it's really entertaining and really gets you to really think about every element of this story and what's going on. Even like a really funny part, but I didn't see something in it at first, like when they go into a bar and Benoit is tilting a picture down, like, do you see this? And there's some details in that I didn't see right away, because it's a really quick scene, but it's kind of a little silly and goofy, while also getting you to look at what you're looking here while you should be looking somewhere else, and it's really well crafted.
Yeah, for sure, and that's what makes these fun. I do want to highlight what I think who I think probably gives the best performance in the film. Like, it's easy to say Daniel Craig gives like the best, but I really think the Father Judd character like has like the best, because he's kind of the central character of the story here. It's all about him trying to convince, basically, for lack of a better term, to kind of expose a little bit of the plot throughout it. Father Judd is kind of like the central suspect at the beginning that everybody thinks it's him, but it's laid out very obviously that it's not, but it could be.
But it's not.
But it's not. But it is. But it could be. And that's kind of, they do have a fun job of playing with that. But Father Judd has like the neatest and best done story arc, and I think Josh O'Connor did a great job as Father Judd in this, kind of playing with that dynamic of, I'm an innocent man, but am I an innocent man? And then playing with the whole like trying to make amends for the wrongs he's done in the past, and why he believes his true calling is to be a preacher, and kind of the personal story arc that he goes on throughout this is a really well done through, like a through line throughout the entire story that I think they do a really good job of navigating while also trying to solve a murder mystery at the same time. Like, I think Father Judd was a phenomenal character in this movie.
Yeah, he was really solid and had the most layers to him, because you said he has a past that he's dealing with, and he has some issues that got him sent to this church, and then he's got his own issues with how Father Wicks is doing everything, or Monsieur, or whatever they called him, I forget. Monsignor Wicks, of what they called him, because as everyone has pointed out, I'm the butcher of everything. So, but it's really an interesting dynamic, because he's kind of our narrator for most of it too, and there's a reason why that's revealed throughout this film of why he's the narrator. But he is a central character. He is the main who has the kind of the most layers and shifts and changes, and you get Benoit basically demands that he comes along with the investigation, because he's still suspicious of him, but he's trying to see what he can get out of him as they're going, like going to the morgue to look at the body, and going here and going there and talking to distant people. And there's even like a really fun scene with Benoit and Judd, who's calling this heavy equipment company, because there's only one way that the crypt to the grandfather can be open, and that's where, you know, Jefferson Wicks is going to be placed and everything. And they're trying to find out, well, someone actually ordered this to be open. They showed up like way too quickly to open up this crypt after Wicks died, and just talking to this woman who refuses to stop talking over Father Judd. And you can see that kind of back and forth of, okay, I'm a pastor, I'm a father, I'm trying to have patience, and I'm trying to be kind and nice and talk to this woman, but also the kind of old Judd, like, just want to tell this woman to shut up so I can talk and speak, because I'm trying to get something out of her, but she just will not stop talking over me. And it was just a really interesting scene. You just got Daniel Craig doing different faces and other stuff in the background, but it was just a really just kind of fun, silly scene that they did there.
Yeah, just like get to the point, because he's like, get it out. What do we got? We gotta go. It was a really fun back and forth. Another funny scene that like really made me laugh. Just the timing of it was, they had the heartfelt moment back at the place where he was staying. Obviously, had this really fun, and this whole through line throughout a lot of it is the father hasn't slept in like 3 days or whatever. Like it's intense, and then they finally have this like warm, heart touching moment, and then like literally 2 seconds after Benoit says something, you just hear him snoring, and you cut over to him, and he's just like passed out. It was really, I don't know, that scene made me chuckle, because they're like, oh, we finally got this really cool moment between them, and then he finally passes out. And it was just, I don't know, the timing of it was just silly, and I appreciate things like that. And that was a ton of fun. But yeah, this story, man, good times. I love this movie. Like, this is one I definitely want to watch multiple times for sure, and I think that'll affect how I grade it.
It made me want to go back and watch all of them again, and go from 1, 2, and 3, and just kind of watch them in order, which you don't have to, because we said they're
individual stories.
They're connected by Benoit, but they're not stories that you do not have to see Glass Onion. You do not have to see the first Knives Out film to understand anything going in here. It's set up in that brilliant way of that if you've watched the other two, then you know the silly exploits that Benoit goes through, and the style and how he handles things. But if it's your first time ever watching one of these, films, you can dive right into it without feeling like you're missing a thing at all. So it's really brilliant how he's created this Knives Out universe that's connected but disconnected so much that you don't have to watch any of the others to know what's going on. And I have to give big props to that because, it's once I finish it, like I want to go back and watch the other two and then probably rewatch the third one after I've watched the other two because they are so different but very similar in the styles and the way they lead things. And I even watched some behind the scenes stuff of how they did stuff. And you always look at movies of being just these spectacular things of where everything is just kind of just over the top and done with so much money and everything else. And you're like, well, yeah, we had a scene where we needed a red light to be shining on a character, so I just took some like plexiglass or transparent red pieces and held them up over the church window until we got the angle, and then we just taped them onto the window. And like just such a simple
practical stuff,
simple practical thing, but it had a really big impact on those scenes because you're trying to look at this character, this harlot character, as something, and that lighting dynamically changed it. But it was such a simple of just taping a couple translucent red pieces up on a window just to get that lighting right. And it's that just fun practical way of doing things, because we are in a time of AI and over CGIing things where we don't need CGI, and it's really fun to have a practical murder mystery. Because you said we don't really have. You have these, and you have the Agatha Christie ones, so, the Death on the Nile, Death on the Orient.
The Kenneth Branagh films. Yeah,
you basically have those two. And that's kind of all the murder mystery we have. So it's been a little bit since the Agatha Christie side. I think it's been 2, maybe 3 years since we got the last one on that, I believe.
It may have been 2 years now, but it's been fairly recently.
Well, I guess it was because the last one, the Death in Venice, was a little bit different than the other two. So that one kind of didn't feel like it was in the same wheelhouse as the Death on the Orient and the Death on the Nile. So I kind of forget about that one coming out just because it was so... almost went to a horror mystery
very much
for that, which we also had a pain in the butt time watching that because of a grandma and her son who decided to sit right next to us in an empty theater.
Right. And go back in our archives and listen to us talk about that talk about that film. But this is good, man. I think it fits in well, and I think it's going to kind of transition well when we eventually start talking about our greatest film trilogies of all time. I think this is a really solid one, and on its own merit, the fact that they don't have to be interconnected, I think works in a genre like this. Like I said before, like you don't have to have seen the other two films to get enjoyment out of this. It has no real bearing on this story at all whatsoever, and I kind of appreciate that. It's like an old school episodic, like you can connect them if you want to, but you don't have to kind of enjoy it. And I like the approach that they've taken with this so far. Like, I'm excited if they do a fourth one. I really hope they do. I haven't really looked to see if there's any plans for it yet.
I think he said he had plans for like a fourth and a fifth, potentially.
Love it. Give them to me. I'm excited for it. Bring them on. I've had a lot of fun with these so far.
Yeah, so Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery is a really fun murder mystery. It's a third in this trilogy, but they're not connected other than by Benoit. Like, you don't have to watch the other two to get enjoyment out of this. I think it was smartly written. You have such an huge cast with Josh Brolin, Josh O'Connor. You have Glenn Close. You have Jeremy Renner. You have Mila Kunis. You have Kerry Washington. Like, a laundry list of big names that they've done in this. And I think everyone played their parts well. The story was intriguing and interesting. It had me hooked all the way throughout. I really enjoyed what they did with this film, and I'm giving it an 8.5. I think it was a ton of fun. Like, there was a few nitpicky things I could get of some characters not really fitting their roles. It was mainly one with that, and a few other little nitpicky things, but overall, like, I can't see anything really bad about this. I just had a ton of fun. I'm really enjoying these murder mystery films, and I do hope that we get to see more.
I'm giving it a 9. I'm right in that same wheelhouse as you. Like, it's one of my favorites. I think after my initial takeaway from these, it might be my favorite of the 3 so far. Mm-hmm. And that's saying a lot considering how much I like the first 2, but I think this might be my favorite of the 3. Like, I really like the story, the different dynamics that they play with in this. Like, I think they've really found their footing in how they want to tell these stories, and I think they did a good job of it. It is a little bit of a long film, but the other films are a little bit longer longer too, but they don't feel like they're wasting any time really in these because they keep moving through the different beats of the story, and I really like the whole togetherness of it. Is it a perfect film? No, but like it's still just a ton of fun, high rewatchability for me. That's always going to score a film a little bit better for me, and I'm putting it right there at a 9. I think the performances are all good. The Father Judd story was really awesome, and you give me Daniel Craig with a goofy Southern accent, I'm here for it all day because he pulls it off so well. Like it's so cartoonish and over the top that it works in a charming way for him, and I'm here for it every time. Just keep telling these stories like this, and you got a fan in me. This was one I had a lot of fun watching.
Even though there's great performances by everyone in all three of these films, it's well worth the watch. Any of them for Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc. He is just so entertaining and charming and over the top and silly. Because I even told you, like it's Foghorn Leghorn mixed with which Foghorn Leghorn was an inspiration for it. The lawyer chicken from Futurama, like I kept hearing him in there, but that's definitely both of them are inspired by Foghorn Leghorn. But it's just so over the top with his, but it just feels like he's having so much fun, and which allows you to have so much fun with his character because he seems to be enjoying it. But you also get a little bit of emotion out of him in this film as well that he's trying to, figure out. And is he really stuck on an impossible case, or is he playing it up and hamming it up? And he's kind of almost a little more subtle with the way he does things in here until he really starts unraveling it because it has an underlying layer that has to do with religion and repentance and all that stuff that plays an importance of how he solves this case. So he's even solving the cases. Each one is solved a little bit differently than the other.
Yeah, they have to be, and that's what keeps the stories intriguing and keeps you coming back for more, right? It's not the exact same formula. It follows certain specific beats similarly, but you're getting a different story every time, and that's what I want to see from these films. Like, they have their own unique identity. Like we said, you don't have to have seen the first two to get some enjoyment out of this. I will say, now that we've gotten 3 of these, my favorite individual character in all of these outside of Benoit Blanc, I really like the Father Judd character, but for whatever reason, it's still always going to be, in my opinion, Chris Evans from the first film. So good. Such a departure from like the clean-cut all-American Captain America character that he's played, and he just plays just like a real jerk in that film. And he does it so well. Like, it's still my favorite individual performance of these 3 movies, but I wanted to give a little extra love to Chris Evans for that one because he was so good in the first one.
Yeah, I think that's really great because he was still, heavy in the MCU, and you saw him as, Captain America through all that, and he got to play a real jerk, and it was kind of the same thing with Daniel Craig. You were so used to seeing him as Bond and not really doing too much outside of the dark and serious, and you get him over the top. So that combination of having Chris Evans be a jerk and, Daniel Craig being the over-the-top Louisiana Southern drawl talking type of detective just worked so well. And Chris Evans was so much fun in that first one. But you don't quite get as much of that kind of performance that Chris Evans gave in this one, but everything, it fits to the story it's trying to tell because, as we said, this is a small town, small church, over the top type of religious characters, and it's playing up to that type of setting. Like, it's not trying to include somebody who really doesn't fit in this world or everything. Like, the over-the-topness is tied to the church and to the religion and to the politics and everything else. And so it's forming all those characters that you see and you have present are there because they have something that has to do with this church and has to do with this town and area. So like the characters are well formed to the story that's being told, and that's what I think all 3 of them have been done so well because even with the second one being a little more over the top with the celebrities and that type of big glass house and everything else and the mystery, like it was still contained in its own little bubble so well with how everyone was. And he's like I said, you've created a trilogy that is, each one is in its own bubble, but they work so well. Even if I go through and I watch all 3, I'm going to feel really fun and good about it. But like I said, you could watch these in any order at any time, and it doesn't really have that importance that what if I watched 2, 1, and 3, or 3, 2, and 1, or 3, 1, and 2? It doesn't really matter.
Right.
And that's kind of the brilliance of it. Like, you can enjoy each one individually, but enjoy the exploits of Benoit as a whole, that he's had this really interesting, crazy journey through these first 3 films. But they're important to him, but it's like, well, I'm moving on. It's all about this case right now. I'm not keeping anything about the past going. It's about the presence of being where I am to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, and that's what makes them work so well. You can watch Wake Up Dead Man and all the other Knives Out films on Netflix right now. Go check them out. Come to our YouTube comments. Come to our Discord. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Check these films out. They're well worth your time. A ton of fun. We think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of them. And, yeah, I think it's a worthy addition to our trilogy list now.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how, now that we have this as a trilogy, where does it sit and where does it lay within everything? But it was such a fun film.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.